I had a purpose before everybody had an opinion.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out.
You want Philly?
Chase Utley, you are the man.
You come out backyard and you try to start something, you always get your butt kicked.
The prayers have been answered.
How about those Eagles, baby?
And Rio Muto can run for days.
Can you feel what's about to happen on this field, man?
A perfect game. Roy Halladay has thrown the second perfect game in Philadelphia Phillies history.
All right, we are back with another episode of Philly Talk, and there's just so much to get into. But first off, gotta start off by saying rest in peace to Dikembe Mutombo and rest in peace to Pete Rose. Two guys obviously ahead of my time, but had some significant time here in Philadelphia, and Rose especially helping the Phillies win that 1980 World Series. So gotta start off by saying rest in peace to those guys, but getting into the other stuff, there's just so much to talk about. I mean, the MLB playoffs are starting today. Obviously got to talk about the Eagles and got to talk about the Phillies, what we expect out of them. So much to talk about. Looking around first, obviously, at the rest of the league in the NFL. Any surprises to me? Dallas almost lost to the Giants on Thursday Night Football. Doesn't happen though. They pull out the win. I'm trying to remember, was there anything I remember from out of the league? Cincy got their first win against Carolina, and so did the Titans yesterday, getting their first win against Miami. Detroit had a really good game against Seattle yesterday. Did Jared Goff end up going perfect? That's the one thing I wanted to figure out, because I saw my friends talking about it. So I just want to double check that real quick. He did end up going perfect, 18 for 18. Anything else crazy around the league? Let's see. Minnesota pulled off the win against Green Bay. 2-point win. Minnesota's looking pretty good with Sam Darnold. It's pretty crazy how revitalized he's been with Minnesota, and I don't know, you ask yourself, what do the Vikings do after this season? It's like, do they keep Darnold? They got is it McCarthy? Yeah, they got JJ like sitting in the wings basically. It's like you drafted him for that reason, because you knew Kirk Cousins wasn't gonna be playing, or sorry, that Kirk Cousins was leaving. So it's like you kind of wonder what do they do about this situation here? It's like, do you trade Sam Darnold and get a ton? I mean, I think that might be the more likely option. Even if Sam Darnold is good for you, there are a lot of teams out there needing a quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if they found a way to trade him, get a bunch of stuff back to whatever team they trade him to, and use that to help build around JJ. But pretty crazy what Darnold's been doing with the Vikings. Anything else that stood out to me from this week? Nothing really too much. Obviously, we gotta talk about the Eagles, but the only thing that stands out to me is that the Bengals and the Titans both got a win before I could in fantasy. I am 0-4 to start this season, one of my worst starts ever. Yeah, I'm in the trenches, and no one wants to trade with me, sadly. So, looking like I'm going to be in contention for that number one pick. I've named my fantasy team the 2024 Chicago White Sox, because it just seems like we cannot get a win for the life of us. But using that to segue into baseball, like I said, MLB playoffs starting today. Had the crazy game 162 yesterday, or technically 161 and 162 between the Mets and the Braves. That first game was absolutely crazy. Diamondbacks get knocked out, Braves are in, Mets are in, and now that makes the playoffs complete. Pretty interesting playoffs, a lot of the matchups are very interesting to me. getting the image up right now. We have, where is it? We have the Tigers and the Astros in game 1, I believe. And I think they're the early series. So, I mean, you know, someone was saying the MLB is always questioning, you know, their viewership, you know, and all that. You put the matchup between Tarek Skubal and is it Framber Valdez that's starting for them in the first game? I believe so. You put that as the day game at like 2:30 in the afternoon. No one's gonna be around to watch that, you know. But you know, it does also kind of make sense when you look at some of the other matchups, you know, like for example, you got the Royals and the Orioles, which honestly, because of the way the Orioles have been kind of like limping into the playoffs in a sense, maybe that could have been one of the early games, you know. We have, I always get confused on who's facing who. I believe it's the Mets versus the Padres, and no, the Braves versus the Padres, because Chris Sale got scratched from starting today, and then the Brewers versus the Mets. A lot of interesting matchups. Really interesting to see what happens with all that, you know. There's a lot of interesting things. Sadly, you know, for the Braves, you know, I know a lot of the hardest part about, you know, podcasting and content creation is that sometimes your takes just age horribly, like literally 24 hours later. Sometimes not even 24 hours, you know. But the Braves, I don't know, maybe they can pull off some magic, but like they're going against this crazy good San Diego team. It just kind of sucks that like they did all this fighting to get there, and they're probably gonna get knocked out pretty easily by the Padres. I really hope that the Tigers can continue, you know, solely because of that whole underdog story. You know, I would like to see them beat the Astros, but I don't think that's likely. Orioles and Kansas City, this one's a really interesting one because, like I said, the Orioles have really been struggling. Their pitching staff has taken some hits, you know, but the Royals also have some like confusing stats when you look at it, but I think they're getting Vinny back, so I don't know, I might have to give that edge to the Royals in a 3-game series, you know, especially because I just feel like in the first 2 games they can probably throw out. But the Orioles got Burns, you know. I don't know, I feel like maybe I trust the Royals 2 starters more than maybe the Royals 2 starters more than maybe the Orioles. I might have to give that one to the Royals. And then Mets, Brewers. This is an interesting one, you know. I don't know what their records were when they played each other, but I do remember, you know, because former Philly guy, I remember seeing all the highlights of Rhys Hoskins, you know, against the Mets. So, you know, Rhys, if you could do your old team one more favor, it would be to knock the Mets out in the wild card, please. Especially because that would be a very interesting matchup, us and the Brewers, you know. But also, like I was seeing people say, it's kind of hard to trust the Brewers in the playoffs, you know, because we've seen them before. Very hard to trust them that they won't, you know, falter. So, just hoping they can pull that off. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if they are able to. You know, a lot of interesting matchups in just the first round alone, and then all the different outcomes that could happen afterwards. You know, it's like the team. Sorry, I'm blanking. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting matchups from here. You know, especially like the Yankees playing either of the Royals or the Orioles. You know, it's like they were fighting with the Orioles all year. That could be an interesting matchup. You could have the 2 MVP candidates in Bobby Witt Jr. and Aaron Judge going off. Cleveland, kind of, it's like, yeah, either matchup's pretty interesting, but we know which one would be the easier matchup for them probably. But I don't know. I remember a couple months ago, I was telling my friend Oscar, who's appeared on this channel, I told him it's kind of sad that I could just imagine the Astros making it to the ALCS again for like another year in a row. And again, I feel like it can happen. A lot of people are thinking it's going to happen. And if the Yankees make it there, they better hope not that the Astros make it that far. And then on our side of things, you know, the Dodgers, they gotta be sweating a little bit, seeing that they have to face San Diego. Could be the Braves if they pull off that upset, but it's more than likely going to be San Diego. And what a tough team to face. You really got to hope that you don't repeat 2022 against that team. And that's probably going to be one of the most interesting series, you know, is the Dodgers and Padres. That's probably going to be real fun to see. The Phillies, bunch of interesting matchups. You know, it's like facing off the Mets, who we struggled with in that 4-game series, have been giving us the biggest challenge this season. Facing off against the Brewers, Rhys Hoskins return to Philly in the postseason, you know. But before we get into the Eagles, let's talk about the Phillies a bit. Can't lie, a bit worried about this postseason, you know. I don't know, this second half has really gotten me worn down to the point where I'm just like, I'm very worried, you know. I don't know what to expect out of this team. Especially, you know, I know this team likes to turn it up in the postseason, especially our pitching staff. You know, it's like we've seen Wheeler, Nola, aside from Game 6 last year and, you know, the World Series games, we've seen him turn it up and do really well. We've seen Ranger turn it up, but he's been really struggling to end this season. Sanchez, you know, was decent last year aside from that one mistake, you know, but he's had a full year under his belt. He's, you know, solidified himself as a starter. But we are feeling kind of limited with him in the sense that, like, we feel like he has to start a home game for us because he hasn't been that good on the road. So that means the likely rotation would be Wheeler game 1, Sanchez game 2, Nola game 3, and Ranger game 4, which many people are even thinking that Ranger game might have to be a bullpen if he can't get it together. You know, it might have to be a bullpen game if he can't get it together and, you know, get back to his first half form, you know, pre-injury. Which, you know, that's a pretty good starting rotation to have, you know, especially because, you know, you can trust Nola a lot. Like, you can give him that responsibility of pitching on the road. You know, you can give it to Ranger because we saw last year it was 2 years straight, you know, in 2022 and 2023 that he was there starting the game 1 of the NLDS against the Braves in Atlanta both times, you know. So it's like, you know, you can trust him on the road, but the issue is trusting him to, you know, pitch his best when he hasn't been really doing that these past couple of months. And then the offense, you know, I feel like I've been saying the same thing for years and years, ever since they formed this team back in 2022. They have to change their mindset, but it's hard to believe that they will when we've been going through this for now the 3rd season in a row where they just keep living and dying by that home run ball. And it's like, how can you continue to do that, especially when you saw the way you were skidding, when Bryce Harper couldn't hit a home run for like a month, when Trey Turner was slumping, when everyone else on the team was slumping. How can you still live by that mindset of, oh, we got to go yard every single time, you know? I'm glad Alec Bone's back because I'm hoping him in that 4 spot could really bring a more small ball approach, you know, in the sense of like, if we can just keep getting guys on base and driving them in through simple singles, doubles into the gaps, you know, it's like the ball doesn't always got to go flying, you know. I'm hoping Nick can have a really consistent postseason, you know. He's been easily the best player on this offense all season, aside from that rough start he had. Ever since that rough start, it was like he was just the best player on this team, the most consistent at times, you know, and that's crazy to think about. But it was like when so many players were going down with injuries, when so many people were slumping on this team, it's like he was like the only guy still there. Gotta give it up to him, you know. I hope his approach, similar to the rest of the team, has changed a bit, and I hope we see him to continue what he's done this year, putting that ball in the gap, you know, getting those doubles, getting those singles, driving people in, you know. But yeah, there's a lot to be worried about with this team, you know. Whatever happens, I am not using the excuse of rest, you know. I refuse to use that. This rest should be a good thing for them, and I refuse to think that any team that gets rest, you know, is is at a disadvantage, you know, especially when we've seen in previous years, especially in the AL, that's really not been an issue much of the time. I mean, the Astros are always getting rest, and they're always, you know, popping off in the playoffs, you know. So how is it that we can use that excuse for other teams, especially in the NL last year, you know, but in the AL, it never seems to be an issue for a team like the Astros when they have rest, you know. So, and really, similar to what we're going to talk about with the Eagles, I think the Phillies needed this bye week, you know, because they need a reset for their pitchers. They need a reset for their hitting. They need to readjust their philosophy hitting-wise, you know, and they really need to prepare for either situation that can happen from this wild card matchup, you know. And that's all I really want to focus on. I don't want to look ahead because we don't know what's ahead, you know. So I want to focus on what's in front of us now, and that is trying to prepare for either the Brewers or the Mets. Either option is going to be tough, you know. And like I said, all you can hope for is that they use this bye week to get back healthy, you know, and really just lock in for this postseason. Got a ton of nerves with me, man. I got a ton of nerves, but I'm still remaining optimistic, but after the previous years, it's just like, I'm worried, you know? And not only that, I'm worried because of what we've seen from this team this year, you know? That's the biggest thing that worries me, is what we've seen this year, and it just worries me a bit, you know? Can't say I'm like, and really no team is, and their fans are ever like, you know, oh yeah, I'm ready, you know, like I don't think there's any team in this postseason right now that their fans are 100% like, you know, there's whole nonchalant, they're all, you know, what's the word, you know, like they're confident, you know. I don't know if there's any team that's really confident, you know, because you look at the Yankees and the struggles they've had, especially with their lineup outside of, you know, Judge and Soto, and then plus Nestor Cortez going on the IL and likely not returning for this team for this year. They're probably worried a bit, and of course they're dreading any potential matchup with the Astros, you know. Cleveland has their worries, you know, with their team. The Orioles, I don't think any of their fans are really confident with the way they've been skating. Detroit and Kansas City are really just happy to be there after, you know, decade-long droughts basically from both teams. Houston probably might be the most confident in the AL, but even then, you know, who knows? I don't know what their fans are thinking. Looking at the NL, Dodger fans are just hoping they can get out the first round first before they can even think about anything else. Braves, kind of like the Tigers and Royals, just kind of happy to have made it and hoping the team can put together anything, but I don't think any of them are super confident. You heard it here, Philly fans. I don't know. We're a mixed bunch. Some of us aren't confident. Some of us are. Padres are probably the team in this playoffs that are the most confident because their team has been red hot, you know. So, you know, this is probably one of my favorite postseasons on paper because it's just so unpredictable, you know. I think that's the one thing I always love about sports is when things are unpredictable, you know. And this is why I like this postseason. You know, there's a lot that could happen on any given game, you know. And as I say that, the ALCS will probably be Yankees, Astros, and the NLCS will probably be, I don't know, what's the most predictable? And I mean, the most predictable is just going with the top two seeds, you know, Phillies, Dodgers, you know, or Padres, Dodgers, repeat of 2022 basically, you know. That, I don't know. Very interested to see what happens. I'm depending on what happens, I might come back with a quick Philly talk, you know, maybe just a real short one right before the NLDS starts, depending on who our team is, you know. So I might do that. No promises. Don't know yet. We'll see. But let's get into the football, because just like last week, or no, not last week, the week before, you already know a lot of people are tuning in to hear about that. So we end up losing 33-16 to the Buccaneers. Okay. I'm not shocked. You heard me last week talking all about how I expected this loss. I expected this loss in the season preview. When the schedule came out, I expected this loss. You know, it's like I don't know what to tell Eagles fans, you know. What were you expecting? And I'm not going to use injuries as the main excuse, but it's like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith were out. What were you expecting this team to be able to do in this game? You know, it's like you were without your top two receivers, and all I saw like Eagles fans saying was like, oh, if Jalen Hurts finds a way to pull this off, if the Eagles find a way to pull this off. And I'm like, I appreciate the confidence, but sometimes you got to be realistic, you know. This team wasn't going to pull this off without their top two weapons, and they surely weren't going to pull it off when their defense decided to basically give up in the first quarter. Like, it's funny how this season so far, it's been, man, the defense was kind of iffy, but so was the Packers. So, you know, it was kind of even, and they came through when we needed them. To, man, this defense really let us down in this Falcons game. They were absolutely abysmal. They couldn't get a stop to save their lives. To, the defense was one of the best parts of the Saints game. They really came through. They were really consistent. They really shined. To right back to the bottom, man, this team couldn't stop anything. My goodness, was the defense terrible in this game, except for Quinyon Mitchell, who continues to be an amazing pick for us. He's done really well. One of the best defensive players. I wish I could pull up the stats, but I don't know where people find the advanced stats, you know, for, you know, games like that. I really want to look into it because, you know, even like Pro Football Reference doesn't have those deeper dive stats to show you, like, you know, how many pass defenses they had. I mean, it kind of shows you, but it doesn't show you the way that others show you, where it's like, this is how many times they were targeted. This is how many pass breakups they had, you know, such and such. So, but he's been really well. Brandon Graham got his first sack of the season. Josh Sweat finally got his first sack. That might be his first sack since like week 8 of last year, you know. Darius Slay was getting torched and then decided to go on Twitter to showcase his career stats, which is like, okay, man, I don't think your career stats are stopping the person in front of you, you know. I don't think the person in front of you is looking at your career stats and going, oh man, that's it, I give up, man. You got this. You know, I won't even bother running the route, you know. Who else in this game? I mean, I don't know. This Bryce Huff, nowhere to be seen. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Avonte Maddox getting torched out there. I don't know, man. I don't know what to say about this team. This defense is so bipolar, but also it's like, I said it, they were the biggest wild card before this season. They were going to be the biggest determining factor as to the success of this team, because that offense, you knew, was going to be good, which, you know, it wasn't super great this game. But again, what do you expect about your top two weapons, you know? Especially because, like I said, you know, people are like, oh, well, use Dallas Goedert more. They did. He had 7 catches for 62 yards. He was targeted 8 times. Sure, they could have gotten the ball to him more, but it was like, what did you want them to do? If they're passing, the Bucs know this is probably going to Dallas Goedert, because who else are they going to pass it to? Jahan Dotson? Paris Campbell and John Ross, who they signed off the practice squad? Who are they going to be passing to, you know? Saquon Barkley miraculously was able to get 84 yards on 10 attempts. That's a real good game for him. He had 32 receiving yards as well. 27 yard catch was his longest. But again, like I was saying before this game last week, I was like, the Bucs have the easiest game plan ever. They're either going to run the ball with Saquon Barkley, or they're going to pass the ball, and their only real target of concern is Dallas Goedert, you know? Real easy game, you know, for them. Jalen Hurts had 2 fumbles. He lost one. But I don't know if I can really put the blame on this, the blame of this game on him. You know, it really came down to that defense not being able to stop anything. And, you know, just injuries that they couldn't really overcome, you know. As much as you want to say next man up, it's kind of tougher to have the next man up when they're coming off the practice squad of all places, you know. But we head into the bye week, and like I said, this game was going to be very telling of what this team is going to do coming out the bye week. And it's like, changes have to come, but at the same time, what changes can be made, especially on that defense, you know. Who are you going to trade? Who are you going to trade for? You know, who's even available to trade for? What teams are willing to trade? Is any team going to be wanting to take on Bryce Huff and his contract? I don't think so, you know. Is anyone going to want to take on anyone from this defense? I don't think so, you know. There's no point in adding to the offense. It doesn't matter what you add to this offense. It's not going to matter if that defense doesn't come through. So they're a very confusing team, you know. It's like, or not really confusing, but it's just frustrating at times, because again, it's like this thing of like the defense is on or the offense is on, the defense is on and the offense is off, you know. It's like I don't know what to expect out of this team really anymore, you know. The one thing I'm glad for this early bye week, you know, we all looked at it as such a negative thing when the schedule first came out, but now we're just like, hallelujah, thank you Lord that we get this bye week, and hopefully AJ and Smithy can be back after that week, you know, because my goodness, you know, are they desperately needed on this offense. And they're desperately needed, because it's like, it feels like the only way we're going to win games is if we outscore the other team, you know, if we put up 50 to the opposing team's 40, you know. It's like, I just don't know. This defensive line is so terrible at getting pressure, and a lot of times you think it's on the coordination, you know, like Vic Fangio, is he not using certain players well, you know. I saw someone looking at tape of Bryce Huff when he was on the Jets, and they were like, this is how he was being used, this is not how he's being used in this Eagle system. Maybe they got to get back to using him the way the Jets did to get him going, you know, who knows. Corner wise, it's like I don't know what you do corner wise, you know, because yeah, you got some young guys, but you know, I don't really know if we can full on trust, you know, Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks to really be on that outside, you know. Is it going to be that much of an improvement over Slay? Anyone would be an improvement over Maddox in the slot right now, you know. I really wish they would put like Isaiah Rodgers, Ringo, heck, I might even consider putting Chauncey in the slot corner position, you know, or, you know, playing nickel corner. I don't really know where you put him, you know. I mean, especially once Sidney Brown comes back, maybe he can play. I don't know. Someone needs to go in that slot, because that's what's really killing them in that corner position. And I don't know. It seems like, despite only being in week 4, this team is like falling apart right in front of us. You know, it's like you got the captains on this team. You know, I don't really want to get into stuff like this, but like you got Darius Slay going on. What am I blanking on his name? Micah Parsons' podcast, you know, and talking about the game literally like the week after it happened, you know, or like a day after it happened, you know. And it's just like, what are we doing, you know? Like, that's kind of the one crazy part about the social media age that we're living in. It's like we got players hopping on podcasts right after the games that they just had, and it's just like, what is going on, you know? It was like Jason Kelsey last year, you know, was doing his podcast with, bro, you got Travis Kelsey doing the podcast too this year, and a lot of Chiefs fans are feeling like he's not really interested anymore. You know, they're feeling like he just might retire after this season. You know, you got, like I said, you got Darius Slay hopping on the podcast. You got players running to social media to voice their frustrations. You got Bryce Huff deleting all his Eagles related posts on Instagram. You got Devin White liking Bucs stuff on Twitter. You know, it's like, what is this age we're living in, you know? And I know it happens for other teams too, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's kind of wild that this is what's happening. You know, you got Michael Parsons hopping on his podcast talking to, you know, opposing teams' players like right after the game happened at times. You know, I think he did it another time, I forgot, but like, I don't know, it's pretty crazy. It's like, I don't know, man. It's very frustrating to watch, you know, very frustrating to watch, and I just don't know what improvements can be made to this team. You know, it's like, I don't know what they can do better, but you're just hoping, again, like the Phillies using this bye week, I hope the Eagles can use this bye week to just really nail things down, you know. And of course, the biggest thing I'm looking at is at the coach. Nick Sirianni is on the hottest of seats right now. I even said it, you know, at the end of last year. I'm like, Sirianni to me has one more year, you know. He has one more year where you get him new coordinators, and he has to prove that, you know, that was the issue. Oh, it was the coordinators last year. They were the issue, not me. You got to prove it. And right now, all we're seeing is that you are fiddling too much with said coordinators and not letting them do their stuff, you know. He's said it that like he doesn't have any input, but it's like, I don't know. It kind of seems like you do. And if you don't have input, then what are you the head coach for, you know? And like, that's not me saying I want Nick Sirianni to have input, but I'm just like, why do we have this guy as the head coach if we can't even rely on him to give valuable input on the game plans, you know? I don't know. Very frustrating to watch. Expecting a lot of changes. And they just got to get it going. I know we're only in week 4, but every game matters, you know? So looking at the preview, next week, or not next week, 2 weeks from now, we got the Browns. Pretty simple. I forgot what I said in my season preview, but with the way the Browns have been playing, I think this is a win for us, even if their defensive line is really being a nuisance to us in that game. But I think if you get AJ and Smitty back, or even just AJ back, I think that's enough for, you know, this Eagles team to really go off on the Browns. A bit of an, you know, at least on paper, due to the start some of these teams are having, a bit of an easier schedule coming with the next couple of weeks. The month of October is looking to be pretty easy, but again, that's only on paper. You can't just write them off and be like, yeah, it's easy. We'll win this, you know. So gonna be interesting to see what happens. Next episode that we do, we're probably gonna be in the middle of the NLDS. I think. I don't know if the NLDS is going to wrap up by Tuesday next week. I don't know. Either way, since it's the bye week next week, next week's Philly tie, I might push it back later in the week or further up in the week, depending on what happens with the NLDS, you know. If it's, I don't think it's going to be wrapped up by then, but if it somehow is, you know, then expect a normal episode on Tuesday. But I'm thinking more Wednesday, Thursday-ish is probably when the next Philly talk might be. Very interesting time for Philly. Eagles in this weird position. Phillies in the postseason. The Flyers season is starting soon, and I believe basketball is starting soon, but that's more towards the end of October, I think. I don't know. I'm not making any promises, but you might see some hockey and basketball content from me once baseball wraps up, and included with the Eagles stuff. Who knows? No promises, but very interesting time for Philly ahead.